The Galactic Council's fear. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was silent. The air was thick with unease. Holographic screens flickered across the vast, circular hall, displaying the same distress signal from the Talvoran Empire, one of the most powerful factions in the galaxy. Their warships were unmatched, their fleets vast, their soldiers countless. And yet, their latest transmission was filled with fear. Emergency broadcast from Admiral Kvarek. An unknown warship has entered our space. It is heading toward our core fleet. Energy scans. Unreadable. Attempts to communicate. Ignored. Defensive measures are being prepared. We request immediate reinforcement. Then, silence. The transmission ended abruptly. The council members shifted nervously in their seats. These were the rulers of mighty star nations, leaders of warrior species, tacticians, emperors, and conquerors. Yet now, they all felt the same thing: dread. The Exalvoran Empire never asked for help. They were the ones who crushed their enemies without hesitation. If even they were afraid, what could this unknown ship be? A growing concern. Supreme Chancellor Orvaz of the Vark Dominion stood up. His reptilian eyes narrowed, scanning the room. A single warship. You expect us to believe that one vessel is a threat. His voice was thick with disbelief. The Exalvoran fleet has over 500,000 warships stationed in their territory. Do you mean to say that all of them are afraid of just one ship? A deep voice answered from across the chamber. That is exactly what I mean, said Lord Valtrix, the representative of the Arvani sovereignty. His race was known for its advanced intelligence, and he was never one to overreact. There are reports that this ship has ignored every warning. It does not attack. It does not flee. It simply moves forward. The chamber remained silent as those words sank in. What do we know about this ship? Another council member asked. A holographic projection appeared in the center of the chamber. The image was blurry, distorted. Whatever energy this ship used, it interfered with scans. But the shape was clear, sleek, angular, built for war. A ship that did not match any known alien design. The silence in the chamber deepened. Then a representative from the Zyrak Dominion whispered the words that no one wanted to hear. It is a human ship. Panic spreads. The words sent a wave of unease across the chamber. Many had heard of humans, but few had ever seen them. They were an anomaly in the galaxy, an isolationist species, highly advanced yet uninterested in conquest. They kept to themselves, rarely interacting with other civilizations. Yet every species that had encountered them had learned the same terrible lesson: never provoke them. The Galactic Council had never fought a full-scale war against humanity. They had never dared to. Stories circulated, whispers of small human fleets tearing through entire armadas. Of their weapons, their strategies, their unbreakable will to fight. And now, a single human warship was heading toward a fleet of 500,000 alien warships. The Galactic Council members spoke in hushed, fearful tones. This cannot be real. Surely it will turn back. If it is truly human, we must convince that Exalvoran to stand down. But others were less convinced. The Exalvoran do not retreat, Lord Valtrix said, his voice grim. They see surrender as weakness. Their fleet commander will not stand down. He will attack. The room grew cold. They all knew what would happen next. The Exalvoran's fatal mistake. Deep in Zalvoran space, Admiral Kvarek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the blood-forged Titan. His golden armor gleamed under the warship's red emergency lights. His warriors stood ready. Before him, the Vanguard, the human warship, continued its approach. Kvarek's claws tightened into a fist. No single ship challenges the Exalvoran Empire, he growled. Fire all weapons. A massive barrage erupted. Missiles, energy beams, plasma torpedoes, all aimed at the human vessel. But as the Galactic Council watched the battle unfold from afar, they saw something that made their blood run cold. The attack did nothing. The Vanguard kept moving. No shields flickered. No damage registered. It was as if the Exalvoran's most powerful weapons did not exist. Then, for the first time, the human ship sent a transmission. A simple message. Is that all? The human ship arrives. The Exalvoran fleet stretched across space like a mechanical wall of death minus 500,000 warships, each one armed with planet-killer cannons, gravity bombs, and antimatter torpedoes. Their ranks were so vast that even the stars seemed to vanish behind them. Yet, despite this overwhelming force, the lone human warship, the Vanguard, continued forward. It did not change course. It did not slow down. It did not even acknowledge the enemy fleet. Admiral Kvarek stood rigid on the bridge of his flagship, blood-forged Titan. His golden battle armor gleamed under the artificial lights, but his clawed hands twitched. Something felt wrong. The Vanguard was not acting like any enemy ship he had ever encountered. It did not scan them. It did not move into formation. It simply drifted closer, as if the entire fleet of the Salvoran Empire was irrelevant. A silence spread over the fleet. For the first time in his long military career, Kvarek felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. A terrifying presence. Inside the Galactic Council chamber, leaders from across the stars watched the battle unfold through live transmissions. Chancellor Orvas, usually calm and confident, now clenched his jaw. Why is it not engaging? Why is it not responding? Lord Valtrix, the Arvani intelligence officer, stared at the energy readings. His voice was quiet but carried weight. It doesn't need to. The others turned to him. Valtrix exhaled slowly. This ship is beyond our understanding. It does not fear their weapons. It does not recognize their threats. To the humans, this is not a battle. It is a statement. A cold realization settled in. The humans were sending a message, not just to the Exalvoran, but to the entire galaxy. They were untouchable. The first shot. Back in the Exalvoran fleet, the silence was unbearable. The Vanguard was now close enough that its structure could be seen clearly, sleek, smooth, without visible weapons or armor plating. It almost seemed too perfect. Admiral Kvarek had enough. His voice rang through the comms. Fire all weapons. Annihilated. Instantly, 500,000 warships unleashed devastation. Plasma beams capable of melting moons. Torpedoes that could split planets. Kinetic rounds moving at near-light speed. A storm of destruction engulfed the lone human warship. The brightness of the attack lit up the darkness of space, turning it into a sea of fire. Kvarek bared his fangs, certain of victory. And then, the light faded. The Vanguard was still there, completely untouched. The impossible shield. Admiral Kvarek froze. What? He roared, slamming his fist onto the control panel. His weapons officers panicked, recalibrating their targeting systems. There was no possible way anything could withstand that level of destruction. Yet, the human warship remained still, not even a single scratch on its surface. Aboard the Galactic Council, whispers of fear filled the chamber. It absorbed the attack. One voice murmured. No, it erased it. Another corrected. The energy blasts, the torpedoes, the planet-destroying weapons, they had vanished. It was as if the human ship had rewritten reality itself, deciding that the attack simply never happened. Then, for the first time, the Vanguard responded. A transmission echoed across every channel, every frequency. A single human voice. Calm, unbothered, almost amused. Is that all? Panic in the fleet. A terrible silence followed. Kvarek's heart pounded like a war drum. He had faced countless battles, crushed civilizations beneath his empire's might. But never had he felt true fear until now. Prepare the second wave. Fire again, he ordered, his voice desperate. The fleet fired. Everything. A second storm of destruction, 1,000 times stronger than the first. And yet, nothing happened. The Vanguard remained, floating peacefully, as if it had not even noticed. Then, for the first time, the human warship moved. Not fast, not in a defensive maneuver. It simply glided forward, unchallenged. The Galactic Council chamber erupted into chaos. This is impossible. We are looking at a force beyond our understanding. If they are this powerful, what have we done? Admiral Kvarak took a step back from his control panel. For the first time in history, he realized. The Exalvoran were not the hunters. They were the prey. The first strike. The Exalvoran Empire had waged war for centuries. Their fleet had crushed entire civilizations, turned planetary systems into graveyards, and wiped out countless species with overwhelming force. And yet, for the first time in their long history, they were powerless. The Vanguard, the lone human warship, hovered in space, completely untouched despite an assault that should have reduced entire planets to dust. Aboard the blood-forged Titan, Admiral Kvarak felt something he had never known before. Helplessness. A ship beyond understanding. The Vanguard remained motionless, as if mocking them. Its surface was pristine, untouched, its shields unreadable. The ship had no visible weapons, no defensive turrets, no supercannons, yet it had done the impossible. Every energy blast, every torpedo, every weapon fired at it, simply ceased to exist. Admiral, a Exalvoran officer's voice trembled over the command channel. Our weapons are ineffective. Orders. Kvarak stared at the tactical display. The human ship barely registered as a blip on their scanners. It was like trying to detect a god among mortals. He tightened his fists. We are the Exalvoran. We do not retreat. Fire the dread cannons. The last hope of the Exalvoran. The dread cannons were the Exalvoran's most powerful weapons, designed to tear open the fabric of space itself. A single shot could annihilate a star. 10 of them fired simultaneously. A pulse of pure annihilation surged forward, powerful enough to destroy entire galaxies. The Galactic Council watched in horror as the beams of destruction converged upon the lone human warship. For a moment, the universe itself seemed to hold its breath. And then, nothing. The beams of destruction vanished, not absorbed, not deflected. They simply ceased to exist. The human response. For a long moment, nothing happened. The Exalvoran fleet trembled, their dreadnoughts floating in uneasy silence. The Galactic Council chambers were silent, their leaders staring in shock at the unfolding event. Then the Vanguard moved, not in an attack formation, not in a defensive maneuver. It simply drifted forward, slow, casual, as if it were a god walking through the ruins of its enemies. Then a calm, human voice echoed across every comm channel in the fleet. You had your chance. And the Vanguard fired. Annihilation in an instant. There was no explosion, no visible weapon discharge, no glowing beams of death. And yet, in 1 second, 10,000 Exalvoran warships vanished. Not destroyed, not shattered into debris. They were gone. One moment, they were there. The next, they simply no longer existed. Panic ripped through the remaining fleet. What is happening? Where did they go? Kvarak watched, frozen in terror. There were no wrecks, no bodies, no trace of the missing ships. It was as if the Vanguard had rewritten reality itself. And then it fired again. The collapse of the fleet. Another 50,000 warships disappeared. The Exalvoran formations collapsed instantly. Some ships tried to flee. Some commanders shut down their engines in surrender. None of it mattered, because the Vanguard was unstoppable. Within 3 minutes, half the fleet was gone. The Galactic Council watched in horrified silence. Chancellor Orvas's voice was barely a whisper. This isn't war. Lord Valtrix, his face pale, spoke the truth no one wanted to admit. This is execution. The final message. Aboard the blood-forged Titan, Admiral Kvarek's claws trembled as he gripped his control panel. His fleet was being erased. The Exalvoran were warriors. They had never surrendered in their history. But this was not war. This was annihilation. And then the Vanguard halted. Kvarek stared, breathing heavily. Why did it stop? And then a final message echoed across the galaxy. A simple, chilling statement from the human commander. Leave human space, never return, or there will be nothing left of you. The massacre begins. The Exalvoran Empire, the most feared military force in the galaxy, was dying. Their grand fleet, once an unstoppable wave of destruction, was now a scattering of confused, terrified survivors. 500,000 warships had stood ready for war. Now, half were gone, not destroyed, not defeated, simply erased. The Vanguard, the lone human warship, had done the impossible. And the worst part, it still hadn't shown its true power. A war without a battle. Admiral Kvarek had led countless invasions. He had crushed entire species beneath the might of his fleet. But now, standing on the bridge of the blood-forged Titan, he felt something he had never felt before. Dread. The human warship still floated peacefully, as if it had already decided that the battle was over. Across the Exalvoran fleet, panic spread like wildfire. "We have to retreat," screamed a fleet commander. "No," another roared. "We are warriors. We fight to the end." Kvarek clenched his claws. He knew the truth. This wasn't a fight. This was a test. The humans were deciding whether the Exalvoran would continue to exist. And then the Vanguard moved. The second wave of annihilation. The movement was slight, almost casual, like a predator adjusting its position before the final strike. Then, 10,000 more warships vanished. No explosion, no energy disturbance, just gone. Ships that had been in perfect formation 1 second ago now simply did not exist. Kvarek stared in horror. How? His officers scrambled at their consoles, running scan after scan, but the answer was always the same. No energy readings detected. No weapons fired. No known technology could have done this. The Vanguard was not using any form of destruction they could understand. It wasn't fighting them. It was unmaking them. The final desperate attempt. Aboard the Galactic Council, panic had reached its peak. "This is madness," Chancellor Orvas shouted. "A single ship should not have this power." Lord Valtrix's voice was calm, but heavy with realization. "And yet, it does." A Exalvoran commander, fueled by desperation, activated the Doom Protocol. A last resort. A galactic war-ending weapon. The remaining 250,000 warships charged their most powerful weapons, combining all energy into one final superweapon blast. The fabric of space trembled as the energy reached critical mass. And then, they fired. The end of the Exalvoran fleet. A tsunami of destruction surged forward, enough power to wipe out entire star systems. Planets could not withstand this force. Moons would be shattered. Even black holes would struggle against it. The energy wave reached the Vanguard. And nothing. The wave collapsed in on itself, dissolving before it even touched the human ship. The silence that followed was absolute. Admiral Kvarek could only whisper, "Impossible." Then, the Vanguard retaliated. It did not fire a cannon. It did not launch a missile. It did not send out a fleet of drones. It simply activated a command. And the Exalvoran fleet ceased to exist. In one instant, every remaining warship vanished. The blood-forged Titan stood alone in an empty battlefield. The warning. Kvarek stood frozen. His fleet was gone. His warriors, his empire's greatest weapons, erased without a trace. And then the human transmission came through. The same calm, collected voice. "We will not warn you again." The Vanguard turned. slowly, gracefully, as if the entire battle had been nothing more than an inconvenience. Then it left, without a single scratch. The galaxy will never be the same. The Galactic Council sat in stunned silence. This was not just a defeat. This was a message to the entire galaxy. You thought we were weak. You thought we were nothing. Now, you know the truth. Humanity is not to be challenged. The final blow. The battlefield was empty. Where once stood 500,000 Salvoran warships, now there was nothing but the cold, infinite silence of space. No wreckage, no debris, no trace of their existence. The Vanguard, the lone human warship, had erased them as if they had never been there at all. The blood-forged Titan, the flagship of the Salvoran Empire, was the only survivor. And Admiral Kiveric, he was no longer a warrior. He was a relic, left floating in the aftermath of something beyond his understanding. A galaxy in shock. Across the galaxy, the transmissions spread. Every major empire, every warlord, every conqueror, every ruler witnessed the battle in real time. Or rather, the lack of one. There had been no fight, no struggle. The Exalvoran fleet, the pride of an empire, had been removed like an afterthought. The Galactic Council sat frozen, their screens filled with nothingness, the last recorded image of the battlefield before the Vanguard's final attack. Silence hung heavy in the chamber. Then, Chancellor Orvas broke the silence. "This is not war." Lord Valtrix exhaled slowly. His voice was barely above a whisper. "This is something else entirely." The aftermath on the blood-forged Titan. Admiral Kiveric remained still. His claws, once weapons of war, trembled against his control panel. His warriors were gone. His fleet was gone. His empire was broken. A weak voice came through his ship's emergency channels. "Admiral, what do we do?" He had no answer, because there was nothing to do. The Vanguard had left. Not as a retreat, not as a surrender, but as a statement. The humans had allowed him to live. Why? Was it mercy? Or was it something far worse? Indifference. The Exalvoran Empire was nothing to them. Nothing at all. A warning to the universe. The Galactic Council had always debated humanity's strength. They had wondered, theorized, feared, but never truly understood. Now they did. The Vanguard's final transmission was short. Simple. "This is your only warning." It was not directed only at the Exalvoran. It was a message to every empire that had ever considered humanity a lesser species. A message to every warlord who thought they could invade human space. A message to every ruler who believed humanity was just another race in the vast cosmos. They had all been wrong. And now, they understood the truth. Humanity was not to be challenged. The Emperor's fear. On the Exalvoran homeworld, deep within the Imperial throne room, Emperor Exalvoran III sat in stunned silence. His empire was built on war, strength, conquest. Now it was built on fear. A single human ship had annihilated his greatest fleet without suffering a scratch. His mind raced. If one ship could do this, how many did humanity truly have? Had the Exalvoran provoked the strongest species in the universe? He clenched his fists. "Recall all fleets," he ordered. "No ship will enter human space ever again." His war generals looked at him, shocked. The Exalvoran had never surrendered. But now, they had no choice. The fear spreads. Across the stars, news of the battle spread. On Dozari Prime, the war-driven Dozari species canceled all plans for a human invasion. On Rethic VII, the ruling warlords of the Rethic deleted every strategy for expanding into human space. On Wevax Station, the Wevax Syndicate, known for enslaving weaker species, erased humanity from their list of possible targets. The message was clear. Every empire, every faction, every civilization now understood. If one human ship could do this, What would happen if an entire fleet arrived? The silent threat. Humanity did not respond to the growing fear. They did not send fleets to claim new territory. They did not demand surrender. They did nothing. And that was the true horror, because nobody knew what humanity wanted. The Galactic Council held secret meetings, debating how to handle the situation. But no answer came, because humanity was not asking for anything. They were simply watching. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. The aftermath. The battle that wasn't a battle had ended. The Vanguard had left the battlefield untouched, drifting away, as if it had never been there at all. But the galaxy would never forget. The Exalvoran Empire, once the most feared military power in the universe, was now a shadow of its former self. Its fleets, its pride, its legend of invincibility, gone. And yet, humanity had not declared war. They had not demanded surrender. They had not even acknowledged their victory. That was the part that terrified the galaxy the most. A galaxy on its knees. In the halls of the Galactic Council, the air was thick with unease. Representatives from thousands of civilizations sat in silence, staring at the last recorded footage of the battle, the moment 500,000 warships simply ceased to exist. The Exalvoran throne was empty. Admiral Kaverick had never returned. His ship, the blood-forged Titan, had limped back to Exalvoran space, the only survivor of a fleet that once controlled a quarter of the known universe. But what truly sent shockwaves across the stars was humanity's silence. They did not gloat. They did not issue threats. They did not respond to the thousands of messages sent from empires desperate to open communication. They said nothing. The fear of the unknown. Chancellor Orvas, leader of the Vark Dominion, spoke first. His voice was shaken, uncertain. Words did not come easily to him. What do we do now? A rare question, one no leader in this chamber had ever needed to ask. For centuries, the Galactic Council had always been the superior force. They had controlled trade, law, war. They had been the gods of their own universe. But now, they were just children playing with fire. Lord Veltrix, known for his sharp mind and cold logic, exhaled slowly. We must assume we are already at their mercy. A chilling silence followed. The implication was terrifying. If humanity was this powerful, if they could erase an empire's greatest fleet in an instant, then the only reason the Council still existed was because humanity allowed it. They were not equals. They were not even rivals. They were prey that had been spared. The silent conquerors. While the Galactic Council debated in fear, the rest of the galaxy was already shifting. The Dozari warlords, once known for their ruthless conquests, ordered a full retreat from the borders of human space. The Zyrak Dominion, infamous for enslaving weaker species, freed all human prisoners overnight, without a single word. The Rethic Syndicate, a pirate empire that had raided human outposts for years, vanished from the galactic map. One after another, civilizations changed, not because humans had ordered them to, but because everyone feared what would happen if they didn't. Without firing another shot, without moving another ship, humanity had conquered the galaxy. Not through war, through fear. The Exalvoran Emperor's choice. On the shattered throne world of Salvora, the once mighty Emperor Exalvoran III sat alone. His palace was silent. The grand halls, once filled with warriors, stood empty. The Exalvoran Empire was no longer feared. Now, it was pitied. He stared at the last message the Vanguard had sent before leaving. The words burned into his mind. This is your only warning. His claws clenched. His empire had built its legacy on war, on strength, on never surrendering. But this time, they had no choice. With shaking hands, the Emperor drafted a declaration. For the first time in its history, the Exalvoran Empire would surrender. Not to humanity, but to fear. The humans remained silent. And yet, Despite the panic spreading across the stars, humanity remained quiet. No fleets moved. No diplomats arrived. No threats were made. Nothing changed. To the outside galaxy, this silence was unbearable. Why had the humans done this? Why had they shown their power in such an overwhelming way and then disappeared? Were they waiting? Were they testing the galaxy? Or was this just the beginning? No one knew, and that uncertainty was more terrifying than anything else. The new galactic order. Within months, the galaxy had transformed. Wars stopped. Order conflicts vanished. Criminal syndicates fled. The Galactic Council no longer spoke of expanding into human space, because no one dared to say the name humanity out loud. The power that had once ruled the galaxy, the great empires, the Council, the warlords, had been replaced. And the terrifying truth was that humanity hadn't even asked for it. They had not claimed the throne. They had simply left it empty. And everyone else was too afraid to sit in it. Final message. On a lonely outpost at the edge of the galaxy, an old Salvoran trader watched the stars. He had lived through the age of conquest, had fought in the name of his empire. But those days were gone. And as he looked into the endless dark, he whispered the words every species in the galaxy now feared. If one human ship could do this, he shivered. What happens when more arrive?